Today we're going to be doing something that I haven't done in a long time, where we're going to be starting a series where I build out a full page layout. People have been asking me for this type of thing for a long time, and so yeah, we're going to dive in and create this layout that you can see right here. This is a Frontend Mentor project. It's a free one, so I will link it down in the description below if you want to follow along with it, or if you want to take your stab at it before you watch me do it. Hello my front-end friends, thank you so much for coming to join me for yet another video, and if you're new here, my name is Kevin, and here at my channel, I'm here to help you fall madly, deeply in love with CSS, and if I can't get you to fall in love with it, I'm hoping to at least help you be a little bit less frustrated by it, and that's what this series is mostly going to be about, but maybe a little bit more than that as well. So as I said, it is the beginning of a series. There will be multiple videos in this, each one coming out a few days after the previous one, and we're really going to go into this one in how I would approach starting a new project. The designers have just given me this file. I haven't done any work on it yet. We're going to be diving in, analyzing the layout, looking at the different things that might be a challenge, and building it how I would build this as an actual project. Now that said, I do want to keep this fairly beginner friendly, so I'm not going to be going into the world of Sass or doing other things like that, though we will be using Vite just to sort of get things up and running and all of that, but nothing too complicated there. You're going to see it's very, very easy to do. And yeah, I want to make it so we can sort of explain my thought process as much as possible. This will be the first time that I'm actually building this project out, because I want to show you really how I would do it from scratch, including the problems I might run into and how I solve those problems. Now these videos will be edited, so if I do run into a problem that takes a long time to fix, I won't show you 45 minutes of me banging my head against the wall, but I will show you how I eventually found the solution to it. But I don't know what we're going to run into or anything, because as I said, I haven't done any of this yet. And as part one of this series, what we're going to do is analyze the files that we're actually going to be starting with and what we're looking at, break it down a little bit, see if there's anything that might be a problem or things that we might have to think about a little bit deeper, and just get an idea of what we're actually trying to do, a big picture idea. And then we'll set up like the basic project structure and starting thing that we're going to use and build off of from there. And that will lead us into the following parts where we'll go into more detail on each section that we're going to be looking at as we build it out. And so yeah, the first thing, let's dive in right now for the beginning of this. And you can see here I have Figma open. So if you do have a free Frontend Mentor account, you can't get the Figma file, but don't worry about that too much. There's not too much extra you get in a project like this one anyway. And let's look at what they've given us as our files to start with, where I have my colors, I have my desktop, the active states for the buttons, so when we're hovering on top, what they look like, and then the mobile view here, as well as the mobile menu that we're going to have to build out. And yeah, when I have a project like this, the first thing I really generally like to do is just look at it really quickly and sort of analyze a few different things. So right off the bat, one of the things that is nice is the consistent colors throughout. There's not very many colors. We just have a handful of them, which always makes life a little bit easier on that side of things. The typography looks very straightforward. I don't see any problems arising from that. The navigation looks fairly straightforward. Now this SVG, I'm guessing, there and here, I like looking at how that's going to work across. So, you know, what happens to those when we get to mobile. So a few little differences happening. Also just here, something that's a little bit more unusual actually. Usually I find whatever's on the left ends up on the top once we move over to mobile. But here in the mobile view, the image is actually shifting up. So like all of this goes up into that space and then this comes after it. So it's a little bit more unusual. We don't have too much when it comes to like shifting background colors or anything, though we do have a few things here. But it looks like we do have a consistent container type thing, like all of this is all the same width until we get to this carousel down here. And then that same container carries through to all the stuff down here. So we don't have like different widths showing up on stuff, which is always nice and handy, because that makes things just a little bit harder to do. The biggest challenge, honestly, is probably going to be this carousel right here, because we have it here where there's no real indication. I don't see any arrows or anything like that. I think we might deviate a little bit from the design just so we actually have arrows to click on, because as it is now, unless I guess it's auto going, but I'm not a fan of those. So anyway, we'll see what happens when we get there. I'm going to plan some things out. But we can see that things look quite a lot different when we're in the mobile view, where we get the little icons down here at the bottom to show us which slide we're on. So a few things that we need to take into account, but nothing too complex. Oh, here's the full slider. I didn't even see that before. So here's all, like we have 4 and we fit 3 on the screen, or like 2, and these 2 are hiding a little bit, I guess, just to show us that there is more that's there. So overall, it doesn't look too complicated, but before I like diving into the projects, I do want to like look at a few more things on here. Like here, we have a 2-column layout, and actually this looks pretty consistent when we come down to this section. So this 2-column and this 2-column, including like the gaps that are around these things, they actually look really consistent, which is nice because that's not always the case, but that makes life a bit easier. This area is what's different about, like, this box here is not too complicated actually, but then here we sort of have 2 columns, but it depends how we want to approach it. And when I am looking at a layout like this, the first thing I am thinking of is like, what elements am I going to be using? So like for most things, it's, you don't stress too much. Like, oh, here I see like a div coming across this, which is my container. I'll have something in that that's going to create the 2 columns, things like that. I don't really stress too much about, but it's when you see things like this where we have these numbering systems and it's like, well, what's different? Is it really like, are these 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3 purely decorative, or is it more of a numbered list? And so like from a semantics point of view, which one would be better to use here? To me, the numbering here is more visual than it is like, oh, this is the number 1 thing, the number 2 thing, the number 3 thing. Because we do have the numbers, I might do this as a numbered list. I'm still trying to decide on that, and maybe we'll sort of make a decision, but definitely ULs here or OLs. And then depending how we'll do the numbers. And that would actually change a little bit how you'd want to do this, because if you're doing it with a list and this is part of your list, or even if you're doing it like a before and an after, this would become like padding or something like that. Whereas if I was doing this as something that is, just a visual where I could just throw a div in there or something like that, then I could actually make this like a 2-column section where I have a div that's doing a left column and a right column for each of them. So some thought will be going into that, or we'll see, because if it is pseudo elements, there's a bit more. I have a few ideas there. We'll see. This is a carousel that I don't want to spend too much time on making a good carousel. So we're going to see if we can find like a nice, accessible, easy slider or carousel type thing. Because making ones that are accessible is actually really, really hard to do. There's a lot that goes into it. So maybe we can speed that up by bringing a third party in for that. And down here, there doesn't look like there's anything too complicated. Yeah. So I think overall, it's looking pretty good. And yeah, that's sort of the first step that I like to take. And now that I've sort of had the time to look over things, and of course, looking over these, oh, there's another difference actually here. These lists look a little different, but that's not a big deal. I'm not too stressed about that. There are some thoughts we're also going to have to make here when it comes to where's the media query going to be. Do we need more than one media query? I'm guessing the font sizes shift around a little bit and things like that as well. So we will have to, at least some of them will. Anyway, we'll dive in and look at that as we're styling things up a little bit more. Or not styling things up. We'll do that in the next step when we set up everything we need, which I think we're ready to do now. I think we're ready to sort of set the base that we're going to build everything up on top of. So yeah, we'll jump into VS Code and we'll start doing that. And so here's VS Code. And I don't even need VS Code for this step. You could open this up in Terminal or something else if you want, but we're going to be using VS Code, or I am anyway. So I'm going to open up VS Code here. And instead of going to a folder or doing something else, I'm going to go into my terminal. And you can get that by going to View and then Terminal here, or on my keyboard it's Control backtick, it's Command backtick, but I know in Europe apparently that doesn't, it's a different shortcut. So, but yeah, we want to open up our terminal here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is navigate to my desktop, and I'm just like in my thing here, so my users. So I'm just going to do a CD, which is change directory. Let's make this a little bit bigger. CD, and then I'm just going to write desktop. And from here, and I'm doing it on my desktop, just that's where I want to work from. If you want to work from somewhere else, you can get to there. Or you can even just do an open file and open folder, and wherever you open that folder, that's where you're going to be, like where this path will be. If you're newer to using the terminal and all of that. And now that I'm on my desktop, I'm going to do an npm. I'm going to write create, and it's Vite at latest, just like that. And it's going to ask us a couple of questions, and we're really not going to use this to its full potential of what it can do, but it just makes our life a little bit easier. And we'll probably add some post CSS in here to help us do a few extra things, which comes prepackaged and is easy to run in here. And so here on my project name, this is the folder that it's going to create on my desktop. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to write FEM for Frontend Mentor, and I think it's called manage landing page. You can see it right up there in my Figma file. So we're going to do that. And it's going to ask me if I want to use a framework. So if you do want to use one and you're following along, by all means, but we're just going to go with vanilla, and that's fine. And then it tells me the next steps that I want to do. So cd, we'll do that, fem manage landing page. So we're actually in that folder. And then we can do an npm install. And I'm not going to do the npm run dev yet, but what the npm install is going to do is install all the dependencies that we need to be able to run what we're going to do here. And before I actually get started and start doing anything, while I'm here in my terminal in VS Code, I'm not actually here yet in VS Code itself. And so I'm just going to go to here where it says open folder, and I'm going to open that folder in VS Code. And there we go. It's been opened up, and we can see that I'm there because we have, it says it here. We can just see the files that are all in there. And just really fast, if you've never used Vite before, it's giving us a style.css, some other things in here if you're not used to them, our main JavaScript file, and an index here. And it is looking to actually do like inject everything via JavaScript. So I'm actually going to delete this. We're going to keep it a little bit simpler than that. So we're going to delete that. And then I'm going to navigate over into my main.js, and I'm going to delete everything that's here because I don't need that. We'll save that. We'll save that. And my style sheet has a little bit going on here, so let's copy that, and we're going to save and delete that as well. Now, if we go over to the package.json file, we can look in here, and you'll see that there's a few scripts, and these are sort of the dev dependencies, and the scripts are for now the most important things in here. So one of them is the dev script and our build script. Those are basically the two that are the most important because we will eventually get this online and working, and we'll use the build script as part of that process. And here we have the dev dependencies, which right now is only Vite, which is going to run stuff for us, basically. And so why don't we start that off and make sure it's working? So I'm going to open up my terminal again, and let's just close that sidebar down because we don't need that. But what we're going to do here on my landing page, we're going to write an npm run dev, like it said, and this will start up a local dev server running right there. So I can control click on this. I'm guessing if you're on Mac, it's a command click, though I'm not completely sure. And it will actually open this up in Chrome for me automatically. So if I bring that over, we get a blank Chrome page. So let me just move things around here really fast and zoom back out. So now with that open, just to make sure that it's actually working, let's come over to my index. And I should be able to come in. And let's just write in hello there, hit save, and immediately we can see it actually did show up over here. If I go to my style.css, let's do a body background of black, color of white, just to see. And notice how that didn't actually work. So this is why I like testing things, making sure they're working right off the bat. So we're going to come back over to my index.html, and that's because originally the CSS, I'm pretty sure with Vite, is actually going via the JavaScript. So we're just going to come here and let's add a link CSS, hit save on that. And there we go. You will notice I did that really fast because I just wrote link colon CSS. And this is just Emmet that's coming in, and I hit tab and it's going to make the whole thing for me. And when you do that, it's the href is just going to be the style.css, which is exactly what we have right there. So perfect, it's working. And because it's all just running, we have hot module reloading and all of that. If I change something, hit save, now you can see it's linked there as well. So we can delete all of this because we know it's working, and we can get started with setting up the stage to get this project off the ground. And so the first thing I want to do is just bring in all my assets and stuff like that. We're not going to use them right away, but we want to get everything ready for the project. So if I go to the Frontend Mentor page for this, and again, this is linked in the description below, we can download the starter, and when we you can download the starter files, and you can download the design files if you have a premium subscription to Frontend Mentor. But again, you don't need this at all to get through this challenge. But let's click on download starter and get those starter files. So that gives us a zip file. I'm just going to unzip it and open up what it gives us. And here I've just unzipped the files that we got, and it gives you an index starting file that you can use to copy and paste the text from. Or I mean, you could we could bring this in as our index file. I'm just not going to do that. If we need to copy and paste text though, that is where you would get it from. There's no structure or anything in there. There is just basically a blank, there's just all the text there for you to easily work with. There's the README if you want a bit more information. This style guide could come in handy. So what I'm actually going to do, and this is a nice thing with VS Code, is in here, I'm just going to drag the style guide into here, and it copies it over from wherever you were. No problem at all. So we're going to bring that, and then here I have my images as well. So we're going to drag those images in because we are going to need them. In this case, it's asking me, do I add it to the workplace or am I copying it? I want to copy this, so I will click on copy. And I think that's all I need from what they gave us. But again, if you do want to start from their index, you could bring their index in as your starting point as well. So you have all the text there. I'll just copy and paste it off from the side though instead. So let's close that down, and we can look here in our style guide, and we're going to be using this a little bit just because it does give us our colors here, and there it gives us a little bit on the body, though not very much, and it gives us the font that we'll be using and the font weights, 400, 500, and 700 that we'll be using. And it also talks about the icons. I think the icons are also provided. There we go. We have them as SVGs, or it talks about how you could get them from other sources as well. We'll be using the SVGs though for this one. And yeah, I think we're good to get started on this. So let's go and set up the basic structure and starting things that I would like to have in place before we really dive into the entire project. So the very first thing we're going to do is get a reset in my style sheet. So what I tend to do is use Andy Bell's CSS reset. There's another really good one by Josh Como. They'll all be linked down in the description. And so right here, it's as a gist, and I'm just going to come in here and copy the entire thing, though I will make a few small changes, but it's nice because it's a very basic reset. There's not too much happening because we don't need that. If you'd prefer to use normalize or something else, you're more than welcome to use those as well. And let's just zoom out a touch more. And so this is always a good one to have, just to do that. One thing I'm going to change is actually on this though. This is removing all the margins, which I like doing. But lately what I've actually been doing is just doing a star and doing a margin of 0. And it's because not only do I do the margin 0, we're going to throw a padding 0, a little bit more aggressive on this front. And then we're going to do a font inherit. And this is a pretty strong one. And if you disagree with it, that's completely fine. But what I like about the font inherit is it resets the font sizes of all of our H1, H2, H3. It takes the bold away and all of that. So if I hit save, you can see it's shrunk away. It also makes sure that everything is working on my form elements and all of that, where normally they're not inherited. But the reason I like doing that now, it was Mike Aparicio, sorry if I said your name wrong, Mike, that I got this from, and as he explains it, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is this forces people to use the proper classes rather than using an H3 to style something. So like, oh, I want it to look like an H3, so I'm going to use an H3. That's not the proper way to do it. Like, oh, this looks like an H2, this looks like an H3. We'll talk more about semantics when we start writing the HTML. But yeah, I like doing the font inherit here, resets everything, and then I build these things back in. This we can keep. It's the role equals list because you're going to be restyling that, but you want to keep it as a list, so that's completely fine. Scroll behavior smooth is always a good thing to have. Another thing that I've used this for, but actually run into a few little issues every now and then. It's not very often, but instead of having the min height here, what I'm actually going to do is on the HTML and on my body do the height of 100%. And it's, again, not very often, but when you do need to use the body's height sometimes, this can just help out a smidgen. And I've actually had a rare instance of a double scroll bar once, that it's because I hadn't set this up. So hopefully that avoids those problems for me. This we can keep, no problem with that, though I don't know, we might change away from that line height, but it's a nice sort of default starting point, so we'll stick with it for now. Here we're also going to add SVG. So we're setting our images, our pictures, and our SVG as a max width 100%. So this we don't actually need anymore because we have the font inherit for everything set up higher. And this is to remove transitions and animations and stuff for people who prefers reduced motion enabled on their system. It's not 100% perfect, but it's a nice way just to have that as at least set up for that. To prevent that, because it is important that if somebody's disabled animations, it often is because they just don't want to, they're made uncomfortable sometimes by a lot of movement and a lot of animation on a page. It doesn't mean there should be 0, it prefers reduced motion, not 0 motion. But yeah, I'll put a link where you can read more about this if it's something that's new to you. But yeah, that's what we're going to include right there. And then the next thing we're going to do is let's come all the way up to the top. I'll actually keep that comment in there just so people can access it if they're accessing the GitHub repo from this project. And we're going to come here and go to my root. And the root, let's switch over to, or actually let's go full screen here on this. Or close to full screen. We can go full screen. And let's open up my style guide. And we're going to open it on the side. So we have my style guide, we split it apart a little bit, which makes it easier to access the two of them. One thing in VS Code, actually, if you right click on a markdown file, and we can do an open preview right there, or Control-Shift-V, and it opens it up in a little bit easier way to read. So whichever one you prefer, we can do that. Now I know it's a little bit small, but at least we have our colors a bit easier to access here. And let's come in and set up a few things that we're going to do. So we are going to set up a few colors. It's not a lot of colors in this project, but we're going to have our color primary is going to be that orange. And we have sort of that main orange, so that's going to be my color primary 400, and then we're going to have a color primary 300, which is the lighter version. Then we're going to have my color neutral light 100, which is going to be white, and my color neutral 900, which is going to be the darkest color that we do have in here. And it does look like we have a few others. Let's just open the Figma file really fast. Here we're only seeing, we have the blue. I'm curious because here there's only the blue that's listed. But here, actually this primary is going to be a 100 because it's super light, that light color. Here we have a bright red and a dark blue. So this is one of those times where I'm looking at something and I'm like, what colors are they referencing? So we have a really light gray that's coming here too that I'm not too sure about. And so actually I'll show you how we can get colors. I'm on Windows, so I know that we have the build. So a Windows Shift C is a color picker, and you can actually color pick. So if you don't have access to the Figma file, it takes a second to open the first time. There we go. And you can see I have my color picker now. So if I go on something, I can actually see what it is and I can get the value. But if I click on it, it also pops up in an overlay. There we go. And I can get the colors really easily in whatever way I want to access those colors. So if you're just working off a JPEG, this could be a nice way to get them. What I'm going to do, we have that color here as well. What color is this? This is just white. I'm just trying to figure out where those colors they're talking about in the markdown file are. I'm not too sure, so I'm actually going to grab the colors from the Figma file, but we'll do it the way the Control-Shift or Windows Shift C, just so we can grab them this way. And I like working in HSL, so I'm going to grab that. That's going to be the blue color. Okay, we have the blue. We'll call that. We're going to change things. We're going to do color primary 400 will be my blue. And this one are going to be my accent color, which is the red color we're going to use. And then we have the neutral. And if any other colors do pop up, we'll add them to our system. I think that's what we're going to do. And so I'm just going to go through quickly and fill those out so you don't have to watch me copy and paste stuff. And I'll see you in just a second. All right, so I've brought the different colors in here. And as I said, if we run into any problems dealing with the colors, we'll deal with those when we cross that board. So yeah, there's the colors that are going to be there. Then the next thing we need is my font stuff. So let's say font family. I tend to like splitting things off. We only have one font family in this case, but sometimes it can be actually useful to, like, thinking long term, have a separate font family set up. So what I'm actually going to do is font family primary, and this is, you might be saying, Kevin, this is overkill, and it could be for something standalone like this, but I'm always forward thinking where, like, this project, a year down the road, they might keep the body font the same, but change the heading font. And I want to make it really easy to do that. So I'll show you one way we can do that, which is my B Vietnam. So let's go and look at that and get it from Google Fonts while we're here. Unfortunately, this doesn't exist. Oh no. Let's see if we can find B Vietnam here. And if not, there it is. Oh, Pro, they changed the name of it, I guess. So these are the last ones I was using, which we don't need. Playfair, I also don't remove all. There we go. We need the 400, the 500, and the 700. So that's three. There's 400. We need the 500, and we need the 700. I'm guessing this isn't a... I'm just looking really fast, but it doesn't look like it's a variable font. So that's okay. We have everything we need there. So I guess we might as well grab this right away. Copy that. It'd be really nice if Google included a really quick copy button, but anyway, they don't. So we'll come right here, right above my own styles, and just paste that in so we get access to the Google fonts. And then what we want is my font family is right there. So my font family primary will be this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say my font family, or I wrote font family. I usually do FF. We're actually going to change this. I was writing it out again there, and I'm like, wait, why font family primary? So font family primary, and then I'm going to do font family body, which is going to go to my var font family primary. And I'm going to do my font family heading, which will be var font family primary. Instead of heading sometimes here, I also will call this accent. You might, again, say this is a little bit of overkill, but the nice thing with this is if I set up my custom properties in this way, the project does get updated later down the road, and I have all my headings pointing to this and my body pointing to this, and I just need to change one of the two of them. I don't have to go through every place I've used it. I can just go, oh, all my headings are now just going to be a serif font, and I switch it over, or whatever it is. So I don't have to have, like right now they're both pointing at this, so updating this can update the entire site. So we're just sort of gonna add a layer of abstraction by doing something like this, and we could definitely do this for our colors as well. So having, I tend to do that more if I have Sass, but for font families, I like doing this. But if I had Sass, I'd probably abstract out my colors more, but we're not going to be using Sass in this project. So I think we can just keep our colors like that. We need our font weights as well, because we do have 3. So font weights, I tend to do, I actually for this, because we have a 400, a 500, and a 700. And for some reason, we switched away from our preview. I guess it's easier for you to see because the font size is pretty small on that other one. So we'll look here and we have these 3 different weights, and I want to see how they're being used because I want to know where the 500 is being used actually before I name my variables here. So let's jump back on over to Figma and just take a quick look in here. I'm going to go to the inspect version because then I can just get information a little bit easier. So that's 400. This is my 700. These are so my navigation's actually 500. That's interesting. And what about the buttons? They're probably bold though. That's 700. And again, I have the advantage of having my Figma file, but if you come and take a look, you can sort of, they look very similar to the 4 and the 500 to be honest. Maybe it's not even worth having the 500, but I'll stick with the design. I'm just going to poke around. Is the only place the 500, that's 400, that's 400. The only place the 500 is being used is the navigation, with a really small font size too. One thing I have noticed with Frontend Mentor projects, some of the older ones, the font sizes get a little low and the contrast ratios sometimes get a little low. Because here actually, I was looking at the color of this and it's using the dark color, but I almost feel like there's an opacity. It's at 50% opacity. So I'm going to set it like this when we get there, but we'll talk more about that later actually. We'll talk more about that when we cross that bridge. Oh, and that actually, lowering the opacity, oh, there's a way of doing that actually. We'll be okay. But I think what we'll do here is just regular is my 400 and my font weight bold is my 700. And I guess font weight semi bold will be my 500. I'll use it just because it is in the design. You'll notice I'm using regular, semi-bold, and bold. It's because on some designs, your regular will be a 300 and your bold might be a 900. So it's kind of funny because I use the font weight numbering system for my colors, but I don't actually use it for my font weights. But yeah, that's the reason why I do that, because it makes it easy to have a regular that's 300 or a bold that's 800 or 900, rather than linking it like when you have 700 here and then this is a 900, it just feels a little weird. But whatever you want to go with. But I do want to set up as many of these as custom properties because it just keeps a lot of my styling in one place afterward. And there are the font sizes, and in this case we don't have any in the design system in the Figma file. Sometimes we have more information here. We don't have anything that's in the actual one. I'm going to grab the font sizes that are in the Figma file, and so I'll just run through that really fast. So I just do font size, and I try to do 400 as my body, which in this case I know is 1 rem because I poked around when I was getting my colors. So we get my 1 rem there. Then I'd have my font size 500. I don't know how many we're going to have. Font size 600. And we saw the navigation's actually at 13 pixels. So that will be my font size 300. And yeah, 13 pixels is really tiny. So I almost feel like just ditching it, but we'll stick with the design as closely as we can. But yeah, if I was working with someone and I just had to match the design, I would just match the design, which I'll do in this case. But if I was working with the designer and I had an open communication with them, I would be like, well, can we actually find a way to make that 16 pixels? And could we make that work? Because we do want to prevent going much smaller than 16, unless there's a very good reason to. So let's shrink this down a little bit and just see. That's at 56. Oh, what we're actually going to do, let's go look at the mobile sizes first, because that's at 40. That's at 16. Oh, look at this, the navigation's bold. Huh, that's interesting. That's interesting, which is fine, actually. It's going to be completely fine, but interesting. So there's a few different ways we could tackle that, actually. We'll talk more about like abstracting our custom properties when we cross that bridge. But here we have, so that's at 40. So 40, that's probably the biggest font size, right? We have that one, this one's at 30. These are also 16, or no, those are also 16, and that's, oh, these are down to 14. So there's something, if this was, I'm going to leave it at 16 actually, just for my body text. Or no, I'm not going to. I keep saying it. We're going to follow the design and try and match it, though I will make a few small changes if the, yeah, 14 small. This to me should be like a 16, and then at the larger size, maybe up to an 18, if you do want to have that font size difference. But that does mean here, 14, I don't usually go smaller than 1 rem. So I don't know what 14 is. It's probably in the 0.7, I think it's bigger than 0.75. Let me open my calculator. And yeah, so it's a 0.875, as we can see right there. So we'll do that, 0.875 rem. My 300 would probably stay at 13 pixels. I don't remember what we had that was at, my navigation was the one that was at 13, right? Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find it. I couldn't remember what it was. And here, is it small? It's at 16 here. There's a few things that are going to be kind of annoying here. These are at 15. What are they over here? So there are a little bit of inconsistencies. And again, this is, in the older Frontend Mentor projects, I did notice this a bit more. In the newer ones, they tend to be a bit more consistent. 13 and 13. So 13 divided by 16 is 0.8125. 8125. The reason that I'm actually, this is a little bit problematic is if we want to set it up with like a very simple system here, normally like you can correlate like this font size becomes this one, and there's a very easy link to make. In this case, where the fonts are very like a 16, or we have like these that are at 15, and actually I think they're 15 and 15 probably. So those stay the same, but like here we have a 16 here that's becoming, whoops, 16 of my body text is a 16, and the 16 there is becoming a 14, but then I have a 13 here, which is actually getting bigger, like, but then some of the 13s are staying 13. It makes it a little bit harder to play around with a little bit with a simple system in place here, but that's fine. We can work around that. It's not a problem. I think what we'll do, this one was what? This one's 16 here and is also 16 here. So see, like here it's 16 and 16, and then at this screen size we're running into it where it's a 16 here and a 14 here. So that does make things a lot harder. This is 30. 32 is 2 rem, so that'd be 1.875. And then the font size 700, which will be my biggest one for this one, is this guy here, which is a 40. 40, I believe, is a 2.5 rem. So I mean, one option here is to abstract things more than I'd actually planned on doing, because we could point all of these, then these are sort of the different sizes being used at mobile, but then we have a different group of sizes at a different screen size. Because normally what I like to do is just, this is my base, and then we throw a media query in, and then we just change those base sizes, and everything correlates really nicely. this is leaving me having to think a little bit more on how we're going to approach that. Let's start with the easy ones, because the 700's very easy. So let's throw a media query here at media, min width. We'll say 50M. This number we can change, but that's what we're going to stick with now because it's easy to remember. And root. So my font size 700 is going to become 56. 56 is, I don't know, so just do this off screen. We have 56 divided by 16 is a 3.5 rem. I believe the other consistent one is this one, because that one's there also, which is my 40 pixels, which is going down to 30. 30 we already know is this one. So my, oh wait, does 600 not change? We have, wait, what? Oh, sorry, yeah. Kevin, we're going up now. This is going up to a 40 pixel. So we're going from 1.875, 40 would be 2, so 600 becomes 2 rem. Or no, it can't be 2 because 2 would be 32, 2.5. There we go. Which we know because we had that here because that was the size here that was at 40. Perfect. Okay, so I know that's 2.5. The ones that are more complicated are my body, which is 16 into 14. So, I mean, what we could do here is I could do, there's different ways to do this, honestly, so you wouldn't have to, but I could say font size body is here is actually my var font size 400, which is looking at that one. And then here we could say that my font size body is becoming var font size 500. So then it goes up to the 16. So that is an approach I could take. And this is what I said I usually do more with Sass, where I have sort of this set locked in thing, even though we have media queries, and it wouldn't be exactly how I would do it, but maybe we do that. And then we could have like a font size nav is my var font size. In this case, it was the 300. No, it wasn't. It was my 500 at small screens, and then at big screens, my font size nav gets smaller, so it becomes my font size 300. Yeah. We were going beginner friendly. At this point, you might be going, Kevin, this seems like a little bit much, but it's worth setting things up and doing all of this and not just starting to style the page one thing after the other. And hopefully you see why once we actually dive in and start making all of this actually happen. My buttons as well are a 13, and they probably stay 13. Yeah. So buttons are always 13, so we could even do that. We could say my font size button is var font size 300. And it never changes, so then we don't change that within a media query. I think this is the right way to do this. This is annoying. We have a 16 here. I just assumed, like this is 16, and then it stays 16 here. But this one also, no, this one shrinks. This is the only one that stays that. That one, we're going to shrink all of them for consistency. 16 is going to become 16. My testimonials are the 14. Here they're a 16. Good. I think, oh, we have these ones down here, which are my 15. The 15 pixels is this one. Oh, but we didn't create one. So, I mean, this is why I like this numbering system, actually. So I could decide that my, because these are 15, right? These are 15 here, and they're 15 here. Yeah. So this is where I'm actually going to change how I'm doing this here too. Actually, here, let's do it now. Before I get to the 15, font size 900 is going to be a 3.5 rem. I'm going to. So yeah, one of the reasons I like doing this is if I did need. This is an existing project that's been going for a while, and then I need a new one. I can do a font size 550 and squeeze something in between. So instead of a 5 and a 6, this makes it easy to add new things in. Because we haven't actually started applying these styles anywhere, I'm going to make this an 800. This one's a 700. This one's a 6. No, that one's 5. Yeah, this will be a 600, which is crazy for 1 rem, but it is what it is. Font size 500 can be 0.9375, which is 15. Cool. So yeah, I mean, having this and this, it's kind of, anyway, it is what it is. That's fine. And as I said, we're going to change this a little bit. So here I have my body, my nav, my button. Here we're going to do font size, primary heading, var font size is 800 by default, or at the small screen sizes, and then at larger screen sizes, this becomes the 900. The only reason I'm doing this instead of using this, so we can delete this right away, is just so it's more consistent. Like, it's kind of weird to have some of these changing and then sometimes these changing. I'd rather, like, here's all the font sizes being used and I'm only changing these within media queries. I think that makes a little bit more sense. And it's just easier to track than, like, sometimes it's number switching, which is like my base style, but sometimes it's these other things. So yeah, just a little bit more consistency on that. So that's my font size primary heading, and this will be my font size secondary heading or subheading. Secondary heading var font size 700, which here becomes, let's just duplicate that line. This is my secondary, and then this one becomes my 800. Except that's wrong. This is 3. I think that's right. Let's just double check that. This is my, like, H3 basically. That stays at 16, and I think stays 16 here. Yeah, this one is 30. Yeah, okay, so that's the 700. Perfect, okay. And the reason I know it's this number is I know that 2rem is 32. So I'm just like, oh, it's slightly smaller than 2rem because it's 30. Yes. So yeah, that's just how I did that quickly. Is there something else here I need to put in? My body, which is changing. Those are okay. It's still a little bit weird how I have this set up, because sometimes I'm going to point to things that are over here and other times I'm going to point to things that are here. And I'm just wondering, because this, I said that I was going to, like, forget about him. But maybe what we're going to do is, this is also where I usually like having font sizes that are like utility classes that are based on this, which I'm not really going to be able to do with this setup, which is okay. It's not the end of the world. It's just not exactly how I usually work, which makes it more interesting for a video, because I'm really having to think about how we're setting all of this up. So that stays there. So maybe we have primary heading, secondary heading, and then we can just do a font size fixed. Font size, like, we have body, which will change a little bit, and that's fine. Maybe we don't need, I'll leave it like this, because we don't need to switch it. We're going to leave it like this. We'll see if we change my mind along the way. But yeah, that's going to set up like that nicely, I think. And then we can create those utility classes. So for these, I'm going to go below my reset. We can come all the way down here, and let's put this in, utility classes, which are all going to be based on that. Now, what's annoying, if ever you are setting this up, we can go full screen, is if ever you have a single file like this and you're going up and down to, like, look at these and look at what you're doing at the bottom, you can just right-click on your CSS file again and open to the side. You can have the same file open twice. So this one can stay at the top, and then this one down here. Makes it a little bit easier to set these things up. So I'm going to do a text color for all of these. I don't even know if we really need that, but I'm going to set it up anyway. So text primary 400, and then here we can do a color of my var color primary 400. You might say, like, Kevin, do we really need to do this to make the utility class? Hopefully, once we get into the project itself, you see that there is value in doing this type of thing. So I'm actually going to go through pretty quickly and set all of this up, and then I'll see you on the other side. All right, so I've set some stuff up here. I haven't finished everything, but I just want to show you one way that you can work a little faster when you're setting these up. So you can see here I've done all of my colors. So what I'm actually going to do is select all of that, and then I can do a Shift Alt and then down on my keyboard, and I think on a Mac it's Command Shift and down, and it's going to duplicate all of that. And then, because here I've set these up as text colors, and now I want to do background colors. So to do that now, I'm going to come here and just select this first one, because this is, we've gone from, I can see this is my primary 400 where I started at. So these I don't want to be text anymore. So I'm just going to push Control D, again, Command D on a Mac, and then I can go through and multi-line select that and turn that into BG primary. And then on all of these where it's color, same thing, select them all, push my arrow key to the side, and then write background color. And then so these now just become background classes. And so you can work a lot faster by doing stuff like that. Really fast here on setting up these utility classes, you may be going, Kevin, do we really need these? You have the, why are we linking utility classes to variables? Just so I can work a little bit faster once we start actually making the site and bringing it all together. And I didn't finish, and I wanted to, actually talk my way through part of this because this is different from how I usually work because of this sort of the difference in how I would normally do my font sizes compared to what we have in this project. And so I do my font size primary heading, font size secondary heading, which are fine. Font size body I don't need. I'm just going to put that on the body itself. My nav, I'm going to use that when I'm styling my nav. My buttons, I'm going to use that when I'm styling my buttons. So these are like specific things that I can use in specific places. But what's different is I do need these to be used somewhere, right? Because my body's looking at the 400. But it changes to these ones are changing. So what I need is like, what happens when I have a 16 that stays a 16? Or what happens when I have this, like the 13 that stays a 13 or things like that. So I think what I'm going to do is a font size XS for extra small. And you can even do extra small if you wanted. I'm going to do XS for extra small. And this will be my font size of our font size 300. And then we can do a font size small. Again, I usually don't do it like this. This is my numbering. Do I do my numbering here? Okay, let's think. I'm gonna font size var font size 400 because it's still pretty small. And then this is my 15 pixels. And this is the problem. This is why numbering is nice because like I have small, extra small, small, and then like kind of small. So maybe I just stick with 300, 400, 500. And then it's just, I might do that just because, and then like say we did add a 550 at one point, like what name would that get if you had a utility class to go with it? So we're going to do that. We're going to say 300, 400, and we'll do a 500. So again, you could duplicate the whole line like I showed you, and then you could select the 400, push Command D or Control D, and then just change both of those to a 500 at once. So I just sort of have to know that if something is a number, it's not changing. The media query has no effect on utility classes that are numbered, but it will have an effect on ones that are not numbered. So if something is a FS secondary heading, or if it's my font size nav or whatever, if I had other ones that I was using in this system, the idea is if it's numbered, it doesn't change ever. And if not, then I have a utility class with a different name and those ones do change. I think that's sort of how I'm going to treat this project. And hopefully I remember that while I'm building the rest of it out. So right now we have my colors. Let's hit save on this. We have a whole bunch of utility classes set up, our root system here, I should say. So we have all these custom properties set up. We have a few things that change within my media query. We have a reset that's just sort of getting us on the right stage. And then we have these utility classes that we can use for things like font sizes, background colors, and text colors. And and font weights. I did do some for font weights as well. And I think we're on the right point now to dive in and actually start writing some HTML. I'm hoping I didn't forget anything. I probably did, but I think this is good enough to dive into the HTML and start writing some of that, getting everything to come together. We'll be going back into the CSS because there's normally a few other classes I would have at this point for like my container. I'd have a flow class that we're going to explain a little bit. But I think what I'm going to do instead of doing those right now is bring them in as we're styling them and using them on the page, just because I think it's going to be easier to make that connection on why I'm using those classes instead of making, set a font size class is obvious what it does. Whereas the flow one, it makes a lot more sense once you actually see it in action. And that was also a really long part one. So yeah, we're going to end this one here. I think it's a nice ending place. And if you're watching these as they're coming out, the next part will be coming out in just a few days. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Of course, if you're watching this in the future, then you might be able to binge watch your way through all of them. So yeah, I'll see you in the next video. But before we get to there, just a very big thank you to my supporters of Awesome over on Patreon, Jan, Johnny, Patrick, Simon, and Tim, as well as all my other patrons for their monthly support. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.